Welcome everyone to the RTV studios on the campus of Martinsville High School for another edition of Inside Martinsville Basketball here on the MHS Rewind YouTube channel and WREP 15 Sports. I'm your host Eric Meyer, joined as always by Artesian boys head coach Kip Staggs. And Coach, welcome back from the break. Hope you and your family enjoyed that winter break.
Always a pleasure to come and visit and talk about Artesian basketball, and we had a good break, and hopefully your family did the same.
We did. We're back though on Martinsville High School at the campus here inside Martinsville basketball to talk some boys basketball with the head coach Kip Staggs, and a lot to talk about. A game prior to the Christmas break where Martinsville comes away with a last-second win over Indian Creek. We'll talk about that game, and then the several games since then that Martinsville has played, including the game last week in Mid-State Conference play against Decatur Central. And we'll also look ahead to the Artesians' lone game coming up this weekend against Bloomington North. Coach, though, let's go back to before Christmas break. And, you know, it's a good way to really go into that Christmas break. You guys come away with a last-second victory on a last-second shot over Indian Creek.
Yeah, I mean, it was always good to get a win going into the holidays. That makes that next 10 days a lot better. And, you know, Brody Staggs was able to knock that baseline runner down. But, credit Indian Creek. They made a great run at us. You know, the 16 kid had 33 points, and we just didn't have an answer for him. And but, you know, they didn't have an answer for Caleb Cheatham in the first half. You know, Caleb had 20 points in the first half and played really well. And then, you know, again, we kind of let them back in the game. They took the lead late in the fourth quarter, and, you know, we're fortunate to come out with a win.
You get the victory, so let's break down that last play here just momentarily. You have the ball underneath of their basket. You inbound. Was the initial thing to get up to half court and call a timeout, or did you not like the set you saw when that, or can you remember back to that? I know we're both getting old. So.
Well, we are getting old, but I do remember that. So there was about 4.5 seconds to go, and we felt like we could get the ball inbounds, and we got the ball to Caleb, and depending on what developed between the circles, if you will, if he could continue to get down the floor, then I was going to let him make the play and just see what happens from there. But to their credit, they stopped him at half court. We had an extra timeout, fortunately, so we got the timeout called. And so then we had just under 3 seconds to go, and I felt like we had enough time for at least one or two dribbles. And so, you know, Will Baston's the trigger man, and Will's really our best passer when we take the ball out of bounds. And so he was there, and then Caleb was in the middle, and then Brody was in front of our bench. And the idea was for Caleb to come up and look for it and to see what he would have in the middle as an option. Another option would be for Brody to step up, walk up the sideline, and then break back towards the corner, which is what actually happened. And then we had two shooters on the backside, so if Caleb were to get it in the middle and turn, and he could look to his left if we needed to get that option. So felt like we had 2 or 3 different things going there, and fortunately we were able to pull it off.
I know you aren't always drawn up in the sand kind of guy. You like to run stuff a lot. So without giving away too much, is that a set we have, or is that something that you Brad Stevens did up on the sidelines?
No, that's something we've done before.
Okay.
It's something that you know, we've walked through, and we had it in our playbook, if you will, last year, and it's always something to be able to go to at the end of a quarter, at the end of a half, or whatever. In this case, the end of the game. So, you know, very fortunate to come out on top, and it went our way. And, you know, the one thing you definitely want to make sure is you get a shot.
Yep.
And you know, you got to give yourself a chance, and we were able to give ourselves a chance, and fortunately it went in.
Big shot hit there by Brody Staggs as the Artesians celebrate, and you get the win going into the break. I was watching last night the college football through the pregame show. Didn't stay tuned to it very long after that, but you know, Nick Saban was talking about a similar situation there and his team winning the success they've had. And I wanted to ask a question in relation to that Indian Creek contest, the fact that he talked about a game early in the season they had a few years ago where they get down early to a Texas A&M ball club. They come back, they don't play very well, but they come back and they win it at the end. It's harder to coach some of those kids because after that kind of situation, because you know you want to get on them, but then they win, so you don't. You kind of have that same situation. You guys started out that game pretty well, had it in control. They come back. You have to make a scramble to end up and win it. How do you handle that then as a coach after that contest with kind of address your kids about how they play?
Well, that's a great question, and sometimes the scoreboard can lie. sometimes you play really, really well, and you get beat. You play a really good team, you have low turnovers, you shoot a high percentage, and you just don't get enough stops, or maybe the ball doesn't go into the basket one or two more times. And so sometimes that scoreboard will lie to you in that regard. And to your point, sometimes you don't play real well and win. And so that is a difficult thing to manage. And in our case, right after that game, we were off for 5 days.
Right.
So we gave the kids time off to enjoy their family and do those kind of things. And, you still have the same problems. Whether you win that game, that ball goes in at the end, or, that ball doesn't, you still have your same set of issues that you got to contend with. And so in that regard, you celebrate the win and because it was heading into the break, and it's a good thing. And so you do have to manage that. And, sometimes we've had some wins, and, go back to the game before that, when we played Eastern Green, I felt like we played well, but I told our guys we got to play better if we're going to win the next game, right? And because we felt like we were playing against a little bit more talented team. So, you kind of have that thought process in mind too when you're going through that. So, you take it win, lose, or draw, and then you carry it over the next day of practice, and that's where you start to develop and move forward with where you're at. And I think we've made some strides. You don't see that since the holiday in terms of wins and losses, but I do think we have played some better basketball since that part of the season.
And you've played some better teams as well. You go into a Seymour game after the break with a long layoff, and it's a Seymour team record-wise extremely deceiving. You look on Sagarin's ratings, you see they're like the 10th or so toughest schedule. They played teams really close, and they played a really good schedule. Seymour not always the friendliest places to play, although teams in the past from Martinsville has shot it really well there. In the past, you guys have enjoyed some great success over there at Seymour with some of your teams also. But that's the game kind of goes back and forth, but Seymour on their home court able to kind of tough out a victory there in that contest.
Yeah, I thought we did some good things. It's a 3-point game with 18 seconds to go, and when we've got the ball, we're down, and then we turn it over there at the end, and then they make a couple free throws to make it 7. So, that game was, kind of like the record. The score is not indicative of what the game was like. Very much back and forth. As you mentioned, very tough defensively. I just saw them play Bloomington North this past weekend, and, they had Bloomington North beat on their home court. And, they're a good ball club. They're a senior-laden team, played with a lot of experience out there. And I thought they were just more physical than we were. I thought they were tougher than we were, especially around the basket. And, we took care of the ball. We didn't turn it over. To our guys' credit, we got down, but we got after them there at the end of the third quarter and fourth quarter and put ourselves back in a position to win. And, we walked out of that game and, the little things mattered, that because you have fewer possessions. They're going to make 10, 12 passes. That's just the way they play. And so the possessions are more critical. There's not as much up and down. And so I really felt the little things got us there. And maybe it was shot selection, maybe it was not covering, maybe it wasn't taking a charge. So there was a lot of different plays throughout that game that I just didn't feel like we handled well enough to overcome and get the win. So, but not overly disappointed. You go down there, they played 2 nights, 3 nights before. They've got their game legs a little bit. We're still trying to get our game legs some. But I really felt like it boiled down to little things, and I thought that was a difference in the game. And to your question earlier, that's what we talked about after the game. We believe we've got a good ball club. We feel like we've got a good team. We feel like there's some things we need to get better at, and shot selection, being more patient, making the extra pass, doing those other things, helping the helper on the defensive end of things, knowing what you're doing offensively and defensively all the time, being, all that stuff matters. And we've just, really made a point of emphasis since that game that's part of what we need to focus on.
You come back a few days later, you have a home game on a Tuesday night, kind of unusual for you guys. You continued your brief tour of the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, or Hoosier Hills Conference, I guess is what it is. As Bedford North Lawrence comes to town to play you guys, and this is another one of those games where you kind of have the lead, and then they chip away with it, and they're probably going to want to come to John R. Wooden Gym a lot because, man, they shot it well from 3-point range.
Well, they did. They shot it really, really well, and they spread you out, so much different tempo than maybe we played against Seymour. They're going to keep the ball in one guy's hands longer, where Seymour, they'd catch, hold it, pass it, catch, hold it, pass it, where Bedford was a little bit more one-on-one in that scheme. But you're right, they shot it really well, and we were able to, again, we were right there at the end. And, we had a 3 at the buzzer that didn't go in for us, or a few seconds before the buzzer. And, we're right there. And, again, it kind of goes down to those little bitty plays, the missed block out in the second quarter, or the turnover in the first quarter, or the missed assignment, or not getting back on defense, or whatever it might be. All those little things matter. The general public just sees those last 2 or 3 plays at the end of the game. That's what they remember. But, there's a whole lot of game within the game. And, there's a time in the game where you can capture it and take that 5-7 point lead and make it 10.
Right.
And we just haven't been able to do that. We have not been able to recognize, create that awareness where, okay, this is where we got to get a defensive stop. This is where we've got to, have good offense on the other end. And we've just not been able to recognize that during the course of the game, and that carried over into the Decatur Central game.
With the Bedford game going back to a little bit, they had a couple of Coltons there that were able to hit some shots. You came in and did a pretty good job with Leach, who had scored 41 against Martinsville. Staggs got open, no relation there, from behind the arc, a 3-point wise. What kind of some of the issues did those type of players, Caleb did a really good job on kind of locking down Leach, but they were taking some deep type threes. I mean, you guys are there. How do you kind of approach those things? You have to live with that, or do you like, hey, if you want to take 25-foot jump shots, we're going to let you take 25? I mean, how do you end up approaching that eventually from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, you got to. It's a give or take a little bit. So we felt like with Leach and Colton Staggs, we felt like those guys were drivers, and we felt like we had to play the drive first. And then with Godletsky, I think is his name, so he's the 3-point guy. So we felt like, in our scout, we're going to run him off the line. We're going to put our feet on the arc, make him bounce it. The other 2, we're going to play drive first. Every game you go into, you've got to figure out what the strengths and weaknesses are on the other team and just try to take some of those things away. And to their credit, they were still able to knock some threes down. The Levin kid, he hit some threes early.
Yeah.
He hit 3 threes early, and we adjusted, and that kind of shut him down. And we did a much better job on him. But I thought we did a really good job with Leach. I thought we contained him. We kept him in front. We forced him to the left. We felt like he was a right-hand bounce guy. And so we kind of took that stuff away from him. And but he's still good enough he could get there. And he lived at the line there in the fourth quarter. But to our guys' credit, we pressed them. We pressured them. We turned them over. We were able to chip away at their lead because they maintained most of the lead there in the third quarter. We got that lead to about a 5-minute mark in the fourth quarter. We went up 1 with the ball, quick turnover. They go down and score. We battle back, trade baskets a little bit, take the lead again, about 2.5 minutes to go. And then we were just never able to get it to 3. We had a possession or 2 where we had a really good look on the left wing that didn't go in. We had another shot that we thought was pretty good. And so when we needed that critical basket, it just didn't fall for us. But I thought we played much better against Bedford than we did against Seymour. So I thought we made some improvements from that Friday into Tuesday.
And then you roll back in on the road at Mid-State Conference play in one of those girl-boy doubleheaders up at Decatur on Friday night against the Decatur Central Ball Club that have been playing well. They've got some pieces that they've had there. The Barry kid who didn't start but ended up playing very well. They got the Ball kid who moved in from Beech Grove from a state championship team last year as well. So they've got some pieces. You guys started off that game pretty well. Played pretty well, had the lead, and just kind of they were able to pull away from you there late to get the victory.
Yeah, we're talking about segments in the game. So we looked at the second quarter, and we're up 23 to 16, 23 to 17 right there. And we've got the ball, and we miss a 3. That could have taken it to 9. It doesn't. It goes 25-18, 25-20. About 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. Again, we were not able to take that 6-7 point lead and make it 10 or 12. And then we had to fight some foul trouble there the last couple minutes. So we had to make a few substitutions, kind of got us out of sync, but we were still ahead going into halftime. And we really felt like it was important to start and we did. We did do some good things there in the first half. We turned it over a little bit, but they turned it over as well. But when we got to the third quarter, we felt like it was really important to start the third quarter well. And we started off instantaneously with the turnover. They go down and score, but it's still like 34-32, and we could just never get anything going in a rhythm there in that third quarter. And, they made a run. The ball kid, tough to handle inside. I thought we did a really good job on him defensively in the first half. I thought we put a body on him. He's a tremendous rebounder, and we did a really good job of keeping him off the glass. And then, the guard out front, I thought we did a decent job with him, but then he got going in that second half. And, we were and then we had two kids foul out. Jack Wolf fouls out with about the 7-minute mark in the fourth quarter. Then Will fouls out a little bit after that, and then a third starter fouls out after that. You couple that with 27 turnovers.
Yeah,
it's just really hard to expect to win. But, if anything that our guys learn is that segment there in that second quarter, that's where you capture the game. And that's where you got to recognize, capture it, take that 5-7 point lead, get a good stop, get a good offensive set, and score. I thought we played in a hurry. I thought.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we played in a hurry. I thought we got, some of our turnovers were just kind of forced turnovers, decision-making turnovers. Sometimes your turnovers can be physical. You just, physically can't make that pass but these were mostly mental, where we got in a hurry and we didn't see the defense and we forced it in there. Instead of just being a little more patient, swinging the ball, make them play defense. And that was probably, if anything else, I thought we really played a lot of one-on-one. I thought we really just tried to do too much on our own. I thought we tried to do too much without including the other guys, and that trickled over to the other end of the floor. And so, if you play together as a team on one end, you're going to do it on the other end. It's just kind of a known fact. So just, I thought that was probably the worst game we played in that 3-game stretch. And but the irony of it is we're right there in the middle of the second quarter, and we've got a 5-7 point lead, and and we're not able to capitalize. So it can be tricky. You look at it and you go, you got beat, but I really felt like that was a game that we didn't play as well as we could have. But with 4 minutes to go, it's a 2-possession game. And the score doesn't have any indication what it was like. But there was a 2-possession game, 3-4 minutes to go, and we just couldn't manufacture stops at that point, couldn't manufacture baskets at that point, and so it kind of got out of hand there at the end. But I think it was a really good week for us overall. I thought we played a really tough defensive team in Seymour, a team that was very patient offensively, that passed it. Then we played a Bedford team that was more spread, open, more dribble drive of a team. And then you played Decatur, who's going to press you a little bit, try to speed you up some. And so you had 3 different tempos, if you will, from an offensive standpoint and defensive standpoint. So, from that standpoint, good experiences for our guys, understanding where they're at, what we need to do. But a couple possessions here and there, instead of us losing all 3, we could have won all 3.
When you look at that contest, well, you mentioned the guys fouling out. Something I had noticed earlier in the season, it seemed like officials were letting you guys play the games we had seen. I may be wrong with that. I'm not sitting on the bench. Am I wrong in that? Has it been more physical, or have you not noticed a difference in what, and I say more physical, that the officials were letting some of that bumping, that grabbing, some of those things that maybe call go? At least early in the season, it seemed like to me that a lot of that stuff was not being called.
Well, it's a physical game. I mean, people don't realize like how physical the game is. People are in you all the time. They're grabbing you, they're holding you, they're in your legs, and it's just, people. You watch an 8th grade game, you watch a freshman game, and the tempo and the physicality is one thing, but you go to 7:30 on Friday night.
Right.
That tempo is just a lot different. That physicality, people are playing above the rim. People are in the passing lanes. They're guarding you tight. They're making you uncomfortable. They're forcing you to do things you don't want to do. Well, you don't necessarily see that in a freshman game or an
Right.
8th grade game or even a JV game. You know, the tempo, the pace, the physicality, the speed, the size all gets greater as you get up the ladder.
Right.
And to your question, a lot more is allowed. A lot more goes on. But, you know, and so to the Decatur game.
That's
you
what
know,
I was getting at.
Yeah, so the Decatur game, because there was so much of it going on, it created some inconsistencies with what was maybe being called or not being
Right.
called. And, you know, I'm not saying the reason we lost was that, but the game is just called differently. And sometimes depending on who your official crews are. So like we're down at Seymour, and there's bodies flying all over the
Yeah,
place.
I know. Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
But there's no calls.
Right.
And it's got to be something. It's either on them or it's on us.
Right.
And so they let that kind of go. And then you get into a situation where it gets tight by the official's whistle. So, you know, what we need to do, we need to adjust a little bit. We need to understand kind of what they're letting go while still being physical. You know, and the way you're physical is not with your hands. The way you're physical is with your feet and your hips. Yeah. And that's where people don't understand. They think this is all being physical, where you're touching, you're grabbing, you're pulling.
Right, no.
But you're being physical with your feet and your hips. When you're guarding your yard, you're getting into people's hips on a box out. You know, you're sealing a guy inside. You know, you're pinning a guy in a pivot scenario, whatever it might be. That's how you can be physical and without fouling. And, you know, our guys are understanding that a little bit. And I think we can play through most of it. I think we're pretty good. We've got some kids out there that have played now pushing 30, 35 varsity games. And so they've got to be able to get through that and adjust and be able to manage it and without being frustrated at the same time. You know, so what happens is when teams get physical with you, you have a choice to make. You have to decide whether you're going to manage it mentally and you're going to just deal with it with poise, or you're going to let your mind just go someplace and you can't control it. You know, you're going to let that guy touching, grabbing, feeling you just bother you so much that it takes away from what you're supposed to be doing. And so that's the choice you got to make. And honestly, in every game there's a choice you got to make. You got to choose that I'm going to play hard and I'm going to play through that stuff. Whether it's a foul call that it goes against you, it's a physical player, it's a missed shot, whatever it might. You got to choose how you're going to handle that next 4 or 5 minutes, 4 or 5 plays. And if you let that stuff mentally get to you, then you're going to choose the wrong thing. You know, you miss a shot and you just lose your mind, or you turn it over, or you get a foul called against you. You got to decide at that point how I'm going to manage the rest of it. And if you don't handle that part right, and if that other team's being physical, you're done. You know, because it just takes you completely out of what you need to do. And then, so all of a sudden you have mental lapses.
Right.
You know, you have mental lapses where, oh, we're running 1 and you're running 2. And you know, we're in a matchup and you're in man. You know, so it takes you out of what you're supposed to be doing on the next play. And so, you know, that's part of it as well. And I think that, you know, your really good teams can play at multiple paces. They can play fast, they can play slow, and then they can fight through those tough times.
You mentioned fighting through the tough times, and this past, we went down to San Antonio. We saw Villanova play Michigan, and you mentioned the mental toughness of it, and Gillespie is their guard. The poise, being down there close, we were down close, being the poise with which nothing bothered him. Speaking of what you said, guys would get up at him, his turn, his back, leaps him out, just dribbles it, gets into his stuff. What you're talking about, that mental stuff that's so important that oftentimes a lot of people overlook.
Well, absolutely. So, you know, we watch college basketball games and we see these guys bring the ball up the floor, and we see so-and-so post up, and we see a post feed. But what we don't understand is that these people are on you.
Yes.
I mean, they know what flavor gum you're chewing. I mean, they are on you, and they're in you for a reason. And you've got to play through that. You've got to maintain the poise you talk about, and you've got to also be able to function mentally like what the next play is. And the guys that can do that and then have the game slow down to them, where the game is at a snail's pace, like they see where everybody's going, those are the really good players. Like those are the guys that can really understand what's going on. And I don't mean to, you know, but like Larry Bird, and I'm old school, I've been around a long time. But Larry Bird, he saw the game in a different lens than everybody else.
Right.
the game was slow to him. He played fast, he played hard, but he saw everything mentally, and he could break it down and watch things happen before it actually happened. Where some guys, they're just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
You know, you're just trying to keep up. You're just trying to figure out, I got to get back on defense, or where's my guy at? Some guys are just trying to keep up. Where guys that play at that level, and it's all relative because we've got them at the high school, you got them at college, you got them at the pro level. Those guys that when the game slows down to them, they play much better and play at a higher level than everybody else.
You guys had the Decatur game. You come back this week with one game against the Bloomington North Ball Club coming in. Before we get to a quick preview of that, as you look at your team, I know you like to divide up kind of the season into thirds when you look at it as well, but you're in this part of the season that you look at. What are some things you guys really feel like you need to focus on, get taken care of as you're making that final push as you get ready for the tournament time?
Well, I think there's some things that we need to clean up. I think there's some reads offensively that we're not managing. I think that's, we've got some really, what I would consider some very high-level offensive schemes that we don't recognize a shot opportunity, or we don't recognize the next pass or next play. And so I think we've got to focus on breaking some of those areas down a little bit and being better in those areas. So, when we run a zoom action or we run a chin flare, those are things that we've been doing, but we've got to do those things better. So, sometimes it's not the offense you run, it's how well you run it.
Right.
And I think we've just got to run our stuff better. On the defensive end, we've had moments where we're really good defensively. I think back to Terre Haute South and Edgewood, that we were really good defensively. And there's been some game slippage. There's been some guys that haven't competed on that end. It's in there, but they've got to get back to doing that. And then, we've been kind of moving around a little bit with pressing and a little bit about a half-court trap, a little bit about defensively on a matchup scenario. So those things were all trickling in a little bit, but we're not quite ready to unveil it, for a full-time basis. So those are all things that we're focused on right now. Take your offensive sets, break it down, maybe add one, maybe add a twist to something, but take what you have and just do it better. And then defensively, get back to how you're playing it in man, and then also spend time developing those other options that you need, because it's really hard to play people straight up the whole time.
Right.
And so you've got to be able to throw them a different look from time to time.
Well, yeah, because you watched, you were playing some man, you were switching at times, you weren't, other coaches coach too, they see what's going on, and so, like you said, it's hard at times to be able to adjust and be able to do the same thing over and over again that you have.
Well, and so to that point, so teams are guarding us differently than they did before Christmas.
Yeah.
They're saying, okay, we're not going to guard so-and-so. So they're going to back off so-and-so, they're going to read the scout just like we do. Yep. We're going to back off, we're going to play him for drive. We're going to allow him to shoot it. We're going to get our feet up on the arc with so-and-so. So they're doing that. So that's where we have got to read offensively things better and maybe be a little more patient. And when you start playing one-on-one, it's just not good for our team. And there's a time and a place, but when you get to that mode on a regular basis, it's really hard for us to be successful. And but I do like our team. I like our pieces. I think we're close. I think we've got some really good things. I think our young kids are getting better. I think Grady's getting better. I think Reese is getting better. And it's hard for them. And they're 14 years old, where these other guys are 18, maybe 19 years old. And anytime that freshman, sophomore year, you're playing up or you're playing against people that are 2 or 3 years older, it's hard.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. The game is like we said earlier, it's very fast and physical. But it takes a lot for those people to be able to process and be able to manage and be able to move through the game. And so, but I think those two are coming along, and they're doing some good things. And, the options are still open. I still think there's some other guys there that can help us here over this next half of the end of the regular season.
You've got Bloomington North, like we said, coming up on this weekend. You play the Cougars, and when you talk about their ball club, you're going to immediately look at their guy, who's J.Q. Roberts. This is a team that's had some injuries as well. They lost after a lot of their success last year. They'll lose their guard Nick Kleiber, but they've got some guys back as well. What are some things that Coach Spears' team, this year's version of his team, what kind of problems are they going to present coming up this weekend?
Well, so they played Seymour on Saturday, and Seymour's got them beat. It's 38-35, and, they got on the JQ train, if you will. He rallied them. He pulled them through. They scored 40. He had 29. And so, he's the guy that's going to make them go. And, the kid's going to Vanderbilt. He's 6'6". He shoots it fairly well outside. And, he was 4 for 5 from 3 that night. And so he poses some problems just himself, but they've got some good quickness at the guard play. They've got a few kids around that can shoot it as well. They've got a little size. Conte is out. Vincel's out. So they got a couple kids that they're not going to have this weekend. But, I think part of this game for us is just going to compete. I think it's just going to compete and to get after it and to go down there and just play our rear ends off and learn from what we've done the last 10 days, if you will, and try to keep it in that scope and take what we're doing, improve on it, take things away from them, know their strengths, but just go compete for 32 minutes. And if there's one thing that I've been frustrated about this group, if anything, is just that I don't think we've done that yet. I don't think this has been a team yet that we've just really competed for 32 minutes. And, and they can't play all the time. There's 32 minutes, but there's no Ironman on in our roster. And so guys, they've got to come out and they've got to get a break and they've got to play hard during that stretch that they're in there. And we've got to get to the point where we're doing that for 32 minutes across the board. Not just one guy, not two guys, but collectively as a whole. And then once we get there, I think the end of the score, the end of the time frame will determine what it needs to determine. But JQ's a great player, but I think this is really about us competing on Friday night.
So you guys will get out there Friday night, compete against Bloomington North. Best of luck coming up on Friday. And we'll see you again next week, Coach.
Appreciate it. We hope to have a lot of people out there. And then, the following weekend, we got a double weekend with Perry Meridian on Friday and Bloomington South on Saturday.
Yeah,
so
that's big weekends coming up.
January, I told our guys, this is the way January is.
Yep.
And I told them this in January, or down at Seymour. January is a grind. Every team we go against in January is good. They're talented. They're well coached. They're going to come to play. And this is how we either get worse or get better, but we cannot stay the same, and that's our goal for January.
Trying to go down there and compete on Friday against Bloomington North, the Cougars hosting the Artesians. As always, I'd like to thank the head coach, Kip Staggs, for coming in. For Kip Staggs, along with Luke Cheatham, who produced it, I'm Eric Meyer. We'll see you again next time inside Martinsville Basketball.